Coming up on Network Africa. A day after resigning as the first black leader of South Africa's main opposition Democratic Alliance, Mmusi Maimane announces he's quitting the party and parliament. Protesters gather at Ethiopian activist home a day after deadly standoff with police. Plus, Rwanda to receive more refugees from Libya in the next month. Hello and a warm welcome to the program, everyone. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin today in South Africa, where Mmusi Maimane has announced that he is quitting the opposition Democratic Alliance party and parliament. This comes a day after resigning as the first black leader of South Africa's main opposition. Analysts say he has been under pressure to resign after the party's share of the vote fell in May's general elections. Most of the DA's support traditionally came from racial minorities, but some conservative whites abandoned the party in the election, while enough black people did not vote for it. It was the first general election that the DA fought under Mr. Maimane's leadership.
Over the past few months, it's become more and more clear to me that there does exist a few within the DA who do not see eye to eye with me. They don't share the vision for the party and the direction it was taking. There have been several months of consistent and a coordinated attack on me and my leadership to ensure that this project failed or I failed. And therefore it is with great sadness that in order to continue this fight for the vision I strongly believe in the country I so dearly love, I will step down as leader of the DA.
From politics to aviation, 40 out of 44 aircraft belonging to South African Airways, its budget arm Mango Airways and Comair, operated by British Airways and Kulula Airline, are back in service. The aircraft were grounded on Tuesday owing to irregularities found during an oversight inspection by the South African Civil Aviation Authority. This caused many disruptions in flight schedules. Speaking at a media briefing at the OR Tambo International Airport, the country's transport minister says it is all in the spirit of aviation safety and security.
For the many passengers whose travel plans were suddenly disrupted across South Africa on Tuesday, the 22nd of October, it looks like the nightmare may be over. 25 aircraft from South African Airlines, 7 of Mango Airlines, its budget arm, and 12 of Comair operated by British Airways and Kulula Airlines were affected by the South African Civil Aviation Authority's recent safety and security oversight inspections.
The SACA audit of SAAT resulted in 5 findings relating to non-compliances with the civil aviation regulations. The SACA sampled 2 aircraft belong to Mango Airlines and Comair. Even though the SACA accepted the corrective action plan submitted by SAT, 2 findings which may affect the entire fleet of the 3 airlines remained a cause for concern for the regulator. It is against this backdrop that the SACA engaged with the affected airlines to solicit assurance that the rest of the fleet does not display the same deficiencies. It is worth mentioning that by ensuring maximum compliance with civil aviation regulation, the SACA has assisted South Africa to retain the impeccable zero fatal accident record in relation to airlines and other scheduled commercial operations. This exemplifies the high standard of aviation safety and security in this sector.
I must indicate that out of the 5 findings, 2 of them were serious, so we deemed them to be serious. The other 3, I would deem them to be administrative in nature, and accordingly, as the minister did indicate, a corrective action plan was submitted to the South African Civil Aviation Authority and those findings were closed. But the two, which we deemed as serious and critical, related to the issue of releasing aircraft to service by inappropriately or inadequately qualified personnel. And the second one related to the issues of the maintenance of flight data recorders as well as the cockpit voice recorders, which were not done in line with the applicable regulations.
Last Tuesday was a taxing day not only for travelers, but also the airport management. Hopefully the worst is over now.
On the 22nd of October, there was an enhanced focus. We set up a command center where it was ourselves, the airline representatives, ground handlers, as well as ATNS. And from that perspective, we were able to minimize some of the disruptions because the disruptions could have been far more wider reaching for the passenger at the airport.
The Transport Minister insists that there is no crisis as the inspection is routine and normal of SACAA to ground aircraft or issue prohibition orders. The latest ICAO audit on South Africa indicates that the country's effective implementation rating had increased from 83.8% in 2013 to the current 87.4%, which is above the world average of 68.5%.
Joining us now for more on this is our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia. Hello, Betty. Let's begin with aviation first. Talk us through the status of this 44 aircraft that are now back in service and what led to the grounding in the first place.
Well, as has been clearly stated in that report, it's routine checks by the South Africa Civil Aviation Authority to ensure that they maintain the safety records of the aviation sector in the country. Some were found wanting, not in terms of technical issues, but administrative as well, as the chief executive of the SACAA had said. So those that were found wanting were asked to stay back and look through. But what happened was that it was sudden at the way it affected the people who had to travel. So they wanted to ensure that people were safe in their traveling. So the ones that had technical issues, you have to look through it. We know what it's like for civil aviation globally. They do not play, especially in South Africa with a relatively good record compared to so many other countries on the continent. They take it very seriously. So that's what happened. And now 40 out of the 44 have been allowed back in service.
All right, let's turn to politics now. Of course, the big story, Mr. Meimane's resignation. Of course, it shows a crisis is brewing in the country, in the party. Help us understand what is going on with South Africa's main opposition.
Okay, it's not only been brewing, it's been stewing, simmering on slow cook for a very long time. We know that people had expected Maimane to be shown the door, or maybe not resign, or be allowed to resign somewhere along the line. But the basic thing is that the Democratic Alliance, the main opposition party, there are basic fundamental ideological differences within the party that have been papered over to show a more racially balanced formation, a party that has the interests of blacks and whites alike. So in order to draw people probably away from the ruling ANC and to build some strength, and having the likes of Mmusi Maimane and the former leader in parliament, that's I'll remember her name later, but she played a very prominent role during the 2014 elections. Right after that, she had to leave. There were issues, and she said a lot of things. Then leader of the party, Helen Zille, said a lot of things as well. So it's all coming to the fore. There are no surprises. There may be, the surprises are the other resignations in the party, but there are major issues, even policies that the leader, who is Mmusi Maimane in this case, had backed. Some of the other members, like Helen Zille, who is now the Federal Council chair, have openly criticized him about. So a party or a house divided, within itself cannot really stand, and that's what's coming to the fore. We've seen the resignation of the Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba, who had said if what he referred to as right-wing elements come back to lead the party, I will be resigning. And he made good on that threat, that promise, and he resigned within the week. Now we have Mmusi Maimane again resigning. Also resigning is the federal chair of the party, that's Ato Cholem, the former mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, who just got elected into that position as well. He's resigned as a leader, and he would have been the interim leader because he deputizes for the federal leader, that's Mmusi Maimane. Now there are two vacuums, so the party now has to hurriedly find someone because there is a leadership vacuum within the party. There's a lot going on, and tied to Maimane's leadership of the DA as the leader and as a leader in parliament, because now he has resigned from parliament, he's resigned from the DA as well. The other officials, like the chief whip, that's John Steenhuisen, has also left that position. So he's no longer the chief whip of the party. And we expect more things to come out. I don't know about resignations, but it's not looking too good for the main opposition party, especially after the rather dismal performance. They lost some seats in parliament in the 2019 elections, while some of the parties like those, like the FF Plus, that's the Freedom Front Plus, which is a more white party, openly white party, they have no pretenses about that, gained more members.
Yeah, a lot is happening. It's all spilling out of control. Betty, thanks for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Moving away from South Africa, hundreds of supporters of prominent Ethiopian activist Jawar Mohammed are back on the streets as they set up camp around his house in Addis Ababa. This is happening a day after police fired gunshots and tear gas to break up demonstrations against his treatment by the government. At least 5 people were killed in Wednesday's clashes in the capital and other cities. Mr. Jawar, a media entrepreneur, organized the protest that helped bring Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to power last year. Both he and Jawar are from the Oromo ethnic group, Ethiopia's largest, as are most of the protesters. But the flare-up in unrest indicates Abiy might be losing support among his own power base. President Vladimir Putin has hosted dozens of African heads of state for a summit aimed at boosting Russia's influence on the continent. The first Russia-Africa summit, which began on Tuesday, is part of a Kremlin drive to win business and restore influence that faded after the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, which backed leftist government and movements across the continent throughout the Cold War.
For 2 days, Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted dozens of African heads of state for a flagship summit. Speaking at the southern Russian resort of Sochi, President Putin says he wanted trade with the continent to double over the next 4 to 5 years, adding that Moscow had written off over $20 billion of African debt.
Russia is one of the top 10 largest suppliers of food to the African markets. We export more agricultural products to the markets of third countries than weapons. Weapons amount to around $15 billion, while I think agricultural supplies make up about $25 billion. So we have good growth potential. There is something to talk about.
Before the event, he accused Western governments of intimidating African nations to exploit their resources. During the meetings in Sochi, Putin sat down with Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari and more than a dozen senior officials in what turned out to be a male-only affair.
Governors, ministers, distinguished, hardly any lady here, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, I would like to commend you for organizing this first Russia-Africa summit. We can learn a lot from the experience of Russia's ongoing reforms of transitioning from an oil-dependent economy to a modern, diversified, and inclusive economy.
Russian media said a deal had been signed to supply Nigeria with 12 Russian-made attack helicopters. Putin also congratulated Ethiopian President Abiy Ahmed on his recent Nobel Peace Prize. Russia's state nuclear company Rosatom is reportedly in talks with Ethiopia to build a nuclear power station there. The prize for Putin is greater political clout on a continent with 54 United Nations member states, vast mineral wealth, and potentially lucrative markets for Russian-manufactured weapons. Russia says its trade with African countries rose to $20 billion last year, but it did not rank amongst the continent's 5 largest trade partners, the European Union, China, India, the US, and the United Arab Emirates. However, US officials have vowed to counter what they see as Moscow's growing political and economic clout in Africa.
Still to come on the program. Sampling food from all over Africa in central Johannesburg. You don't want to miss it. That's in a moment. Stay with us.